All right, this week's question of the week is, what are some of the things that would get you kicked out of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school? So it comes from one of my friends, Daryl, who owns a Jiu-Jitsu school here in San Antonio, Trinity Jiu-Jitsu, fantastic school, and he's a great instructor and a longtime friend. And he made a comment on one of my previous videos where I talked about one of my students put another one of my students asleep in a choke intentionally, even though that student was tapping. He refused to release it, put him in a choke, and I said, that student needs to be immediately kicked out of the school. There's no coming back from that. And that was a mistake I made, and I talked about that in a previous video, and I might link it up here. So Daryl got me thinking, what are some of the things that justify immediately kicking somebody out of school? And what are some of the things that I think, like, okay, maybe after a few warnings, you kick somebody out of the school? And I thought it was a great question, and this video will not be all-inclusive of every reason out there. What I hope is that some of you in the comments will put down some of your ideas and experiences on things that you think justify kicking somebody out of the school just on the first time, or something maybe after repeated warnings justify kicking somebody out of the school. And so here are some of my thoughts that I've jotted down. One is, if you have been convicted, like I don't do a criminal background check on everybody that signs up at my school. It's impossible to do. It's cost prohibitive, and most people wouldn't even consent to that anyways. But if I find out that somebody at my school has been convicted of sexual assault, child molestation, they're done. I'm just showing them the door, and there's no coming back from that. I know some people are going to debate that and think, oh, well, you know, after a period of time, you've done your time in prison or whatever for that rape, you know, you should be able to reemerge into society. And I understand that's the government's laws, but no, I don't want you in my school. And so for me, that's a hard and fast rule. If I find out, and I don't care if you've been my student for 10 years, I find out you've been convicted of it, you're done. If I find out that, you know, like you're currently being accused of one of those things, I'm going to suspend you from the school, because sometimes these trials may take a year or two before it's, you know, goes through the court system. I'm not going to continue to allow somebody who's been convicted of, or has been accused of rape to train on my mats. It's like, no, you're suspended, and if you get found innocent, whenever your trial is over, maybe you can come back. But if you're guilty, back to my first one. It's like, no, you're done. Like I'm not taking on those type of students. Other people might. That's their business. But for me, no, I will not. And that's for those particular crimes, you know. Another thing is, as I mentioned when I started, is intentionally injuring your training partner. When we train in jiu-jitsu, we have to trust each other. Like, I'm trusting that you get me in an arm bar and I tap, you're gonna release the arm bar and you're not breaking my arm. You know, I'm trusting, you know, my body with you. So if a person violates that trust, it's like, no, jiu-jitsu's not for you. Jiu-jitsu, you know, we like to say jiu-jitsu's for everyone, but for those rare individuals that can't control their temper, that will intentionally injure a training partner, jiu-jitsu's not for you, at least not at my school. Maybe you go someplace else. Another one is sexual harassment or inappropriate advancements to a married person. You're out. I'm not going to tolerate it, not going to entertain it. It's like, nope, you're done. I understand, you know, there's no law that convicts you in a court of these things, but for me, it's like, no, you're not going to train at my school. Matter of fact, years ago, I trained at a school, because when I was in the military, every 2-3 years, I'd go to a different school. And some of the things that I learned was like good lessons learned that helped me develop my school. And some of them were like bad lessons that was like, man, I'll never do that. And I was at a school where it was a brown belt he was married to somebody who didn't train at the school. And then there was 2 blue belts, a husband and wife team. And they were blue belts. And turns out the brown belt, this male brown belt and this female blue belt, ended up having a relationship, having a little affair. And the husband blue belt, he left the school. He quit jiu-jitsu. And the couple, the brown belt and the blue belt, they continued their relationship. I think they even got married later. But they both cheated on their spouses. They was at the school, and I was like, no way would I not kick these 2 morons out of my school. Like, that was so despicable. It was just so disgusting to me, and I felt so bad for their spouses who had been victimized in this, and they're doing it on the school. And I understand, like, I'm not, I can't judge people for extramarital affairs that happen out in town. But if you do that on my mats, like you make an advancement to somebody's spouse, it's like, no, you're out, man. I'm not in the business of training bad people. And there's just not enough money in the world that would make me want to train bad people. And so, is that being judgmental? Absolutely, I'm being judgmental. It's like, yeah, if you cheat on your spouse and you try to have a relationship with somebody else's spouse, I think you're a bad person. You can disagree with me in the comments. I don't care. That's what I believe, and that's my position. And so, yeah, I'll toss you out of the school. I won't train a person that does this. Another no warning is if you just disrespect an instructor or a staff member. Like, I'm not going to tolerate disrespect. Once again, there's just not enough money in the world for me to tolerate that. Like, people think, oh, well, the customer's always right. And I'll see people be disrespectful to the McDonald's staff or, the staff at Walmart. And it's like, and, like those businesses, they may be willing to tolerate it. Me, absolutely not. I'll show you the door. Outrageous behavior. And I can't make a list of everything that's outrageous. But, like, I did a video a month or 2 ago where, like, this coach / parent was coaching their child against another child. And I think the children were like 8 or 9 years old. Now my memory's sort of fading of the whole incident. But I did a video on it. And after this child defeated the coach's child, the child went up to shake the coach's hand, as is appropriate and customary in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. You shake the opposing coach's hand after the match, win or lose. When they went up to shake the coach's hand, this adult just put a middle finger in the child's face. Not only wouldn't shake their hand, gave a middle finger to a 9-year-old child. And it's like, that's something that doesn't require a warning from me. It's like, no, you're done. You're not training with me no more. You're not working at my school no more. You're not going to be a part of this team, like, acting like that. And so yeah, that's just one example. And you're going to look at each cases, but some things are just so outrageous that they just don't require a warning, in my humble opinion. Some things that I will give warnings on that could get you kicked out of the school if you don't change your behavior is bad hygiene. Like, you smell, you got a dirty gi, you walk off the mats barefoot, and even worse, walk into the bathroom barefoot. It's like, hey, I'm gonna let you know, like, you need to change that. Like, and I'll let you know, like, hey, we take hygiene seriously in jiu-jitsu. And I'll give you a warning. I'll explain the rules, but it's like, if you don't get it, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to go someplace else. Another one is knowingly spreads infectious diseases. I worked at this years ago. I worked at this MMA school, which is one of the reasons I don't care to train MMA fighters no more. And this MMA fighter, we was constantly talking to him about coming in with ringworm, staph. He had bad hygiene, and he would get these infectious diseases, and he would continue to train and spread it to others. And I had talked to the owner about it. I was so frustrated with the situation. And then one day, we was doing no-gi, and I did a rear naked choke on him. And afterwards, we went into, I think we was in the office. I was sitting down, and he walked in, and he was standing up. And I looked under his chin, and I could see he had ringworm under his chin. And I'm like, dude, what's going on with that? He's like, oh, no, it's not ringworm. It was just a scrape from shaving. And then like 3 or 4 days later, the very spot that I had done the rear naked choke, where that ringworm was on his chin, I now had ringworm. I was livid because he knowingly came in and trained with ringworm after we had told him on numerous occasions what ringworm was, why he can't be on the mats training, spreading it to others because it's a highly infectious disease. And yet, here he was. And so I had to take a couple of weeks off from teaching class there. And I was aggravated. And then I popped into class one night just to watch. And there's this moron on the mats training. And so I went to the owner. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why is he on the mats training? I can't train because he gave me ringworm. And the owner's like, well, he's got an MMA fight coming up next week. And I'm like, oh, so since he's got an MMA fight, he should continue to train and spread ringworm to everybody else? And I'm like, okay, the problem isn't just him. The problem is you, because you don't get it either. So I was super frustrated. It's one of the challenges is if you teach at a school for somebody that does not do jiu-jitsu, they just happen to own the school, then they don't get it. They have a tendency not to get it. They should get it, but it happens. Another one is, and like I said, this isn't an all-encompassing list, and I would like your ideas and inputs on other things that I haven't covered here. But if a person is an active participant in a criminal organization, and what I mean by that, like one day, like I have several police officers that train here, and one day we had a visitor. And one of the cops is like, hey, who is this dude? And I'm like, he's visiting from out of town. And I'm like, yeah, what's up? And he's like, well, he's got these gang tattoos on him. And I'm like, oh. And like, I'm not an expert in gang tattoos. But if I know somebody is actively participating, and I know sometimes people get tattoos and they're no longer living that life, but that was a tattoo in a different part of their life. That's one thing. But if I realize and I'm aware that a person is actively participating in criminal behavior, I'm not training them. It's like I don't care if they've been convicted in a court of law. There's certain organizations that are affiliated with crime, and if you're participating in that, I am not trying to help you victimize people better by becoming a better fighter. I want to help your victims defend themselves against criminals. So I won't train somebody that's an active criminal, is actively participating in a criminal organization. And then another one is I think I mentioned domestic violence. I had a case where a guy, he was accused of domestic violence. He was in jail, and I had just promoted him to purple belt like 2 days before. And one of the cops was like, yeah, I got one of your students in jail. I'm like, oh, which one? And I was surprised at the person. I'm like, oh, wow. And so my first thought was like, okay, I'm going to suspend him until these allegations have been gone through the court process. But then it was brought to my attention that he's currently on probation for domestic violence against his previous spouse. And it was like, okay, I don't need to suspend you. I just need to kick you out of school. Like, you're done here. So yeah, like if somebody that does domestic violence, I'm not training them. Like I'll train your spouse, but I'm not interested in training bad people to hurt good people. I want to train good people to defend themselves against bad people. So that's my list, some of my ideas. If you got any ideas, please share below. If you disagree or agree with some of the things on my list, please share below. and we'll all learn and grow from it. Till next week, ciao.